By 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Those are the words from the World Economic Forum's 2030 agenda. Right now, as we speak in Davos, Switzerland, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting is convening. It ends tomorrow. And they are talking about things. We're going to get into a little bit tonight what the World Economic Forum is. You've heard me talk about it on here before. And we're going to look at one of their goals that they are predicting by 2030, that in 2030 we will see a world where people, you and I, will own nothing but will be happy. Another one of their predictions, which are really goals, is that the U.S. will no longer be the sole superpower of the United States, but there will be many superpowers. So we're going to get into that tonight. And the news is not covering this. And that's why we're going to talk about this tonight and what that means for you and me. We're also going to look at some other things that the news is not necessarily covering right now, like the lockdown of 26 million citizens in China and what that means for the Chinese economy, what is happening in Russia right now, all of which, as the United States economy continues to plummet, we continue to see record gas prices and inflation. We're going to look at all of this, the global situation that so many are unaware of. We're going to look at that tonight, and we're going to get into what that means for you and what that means for me. But before we get into that, guys, welcome to Camp on the Hill. Just a couple quick things before we hop into what we're going to talk about tonight with all of that. So this past week, I recorded really our first actual podcast. You know, we do a lot of video work on here every week, Wednesday nights usually. But I also have a Camp on the Hill podcast that you can access via Spotify. It's been a long time since I recorded any episodes on that, but it kind of felt like it was the right time to start doing that again. So recorded our first podcast episode this past week. Head on over to Spotify, type in Camp on the Hill, or you can scroll down on the Camp on the Hill Facebook page right here where you're watching this video, and you can find the link for the podcast episode. So check that out. And also, if you are in the Eastgate area, there is an awesome class that is being offered that I'm teaching at my church. It's called Engaging the Culture. And if you enjoy what we talk about and what we get into here on Camp on the Hill and you want to go even a little bit deeper into some of these topics, go over to my personal Facebook page and Rob Mervine, and you can find out some information about engaging the culture and how you can be a part of that class in person to not only hear some of these teachings in person, but also to get in a room with other patriots and other Christians who want to see this nation saved and who want to see God intervene and be used by God. And you can be in a room with those people engaging together in discussion and ideas. So all of that as we head into tonight's topic, the global situation currently that so many people are unaware of. So I want to start off, guys, with what I mentioned at the very top of this trusty coffee here. The World Economic Forum. There's a lot of people that are not familiar with the World Economic Forum. If you followed me on Camp on the Hill for any amount of time, you've probably heard me talk about them before. And the founder of the World Economic Forum, he's a man named Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab. The World Economic Forum is headquartered in Davos, Switzerland. D-A-V-O-S. Davos, Switzerland. It's a nice little town amongst the Swiss Alps. But what the World Economic Forum is an organization that brings together heads of state and global leaders with leaders of industry and tech leaders. So it's really combining the public and the private forums. You're combining business owners and leaders of industry and tech leaders with heads of state. And they're coming together really to look at what are some of the issues around the world right now and how can we be involved in solving them. When you look at it on paper, it's like, man, this doesn't look that bad. But when you actually get into some of the things that these people are actually discussing, it's a little Orwellian. If anyone here has read the book 1984 by George Orwell, it's a little Orwellian, some of the ideas that they pass around. So to give you an example, you can go, and by the way, when you finish with this, you can go on YouTube right now and type in World Economic Forum, and it'll pop up all the videos from all the sessions that have been happening from throughout this past week at the Davos conference. This is their annual conference, and so this event is being attended by people like Bill Gates. He actually participated in one of the talks yesterday. It's a very interesting talk on preparing for the next pandemic. Literally the name of the session, preparing for the next pandemic. And Bill Gates is one of the people that you can see speak on that, along with 4 other people, leaders from around the world that kind of deal in that realm. So Bill Gates is there. You see tech giants there. You see kind of the upper echelon of society, presidents, heads of state there, and they're all meeting there. And so it's interesting because this year's theme is a turning point in history. A turning point in history. And specifically what they're looking at is how to bring together business and politics. How to bring together politically what is happening in the world right now and what's happening in the business world right now. How to bring those two together, how to merge these two things together to solve a lot of the world's issues that are out there right now. There's actually another very interesting little snip that I saw on one of the talks that they gave the other day, the day before yesterday, and it was on the concept of tracking an individual's carbon footprint, right? So tracking your carbon footprint. What type of impact do you make on our environment? And they're talking about a technology, introducing a technology that could actually track each individual's carbon footprint and keep track very specifically of everywhere you go, who you interact with, what you eat, what you do. And so that's what I'm saying. These ideas on paper, they sound good. Oh man, we're going to get together the most powerful and richest people in the world because they can be the ones that can solve the world's problems. It sounds great on paper, but when you begin looking into the complexities of how they plan on doing these things, that's where it starts getting a little funky. And what you find out, so if you go on to the YouTube page, type in World Economic Forum, and you start looking at some of these videos, what you're going to notice is a theme. And basically the theme is these are the upper echelon people of the world, right? These are literally the people that rule the world. And up until about 2 years ago, beginning of 2020, you would have said something to me like that, like the class of people that rule the world, and I would kind of roll my eyes and say, oh, this person's a conspiracy theorist, they're crazy. But then I had a conversation in the beginning of 2020. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I've known for years and who I deeply, deeply admire and respect. This is someone who is a no-nonsense kind of guy. And he began opening up to me about the people that rule the world, the men and women that rule the world. And so I started, got my attention. And I started doing a little bit of research. And what you find out is there really is a group of people that rule the world. And what I mean by rule the world is that they have a very high amount of influence. And they have a high amount of influence usually because of either the amount of wealth that they have or the type of position that they've been put into, or, in a person like Bill Gates, a combination of both. So you have Bill Gates being one of the wealthiest men in the world, and he's in a position, he's put himself into a position over the last number of decades where he has become, I don't want to say obsessed, but pretty close to obsessed with this whole idea of vaccination worldwide, specifically to try to prevent pandemics. Kind of interesting that we haven't really had any pandemics until COVID in 2020. But when you go online and you watch these videos on the World Economic Forum's YouTube page, what you find is their main idea on how to solve really all of the world's issues, from hunger to inequality to the next pandemic, all of their ideas center around and focus around this idea of all individuals, I'm going to put it in my own words, surrendering their personal rights for the promise of safety and security in the future. Hence, one of their goals by 2030 being that you and I will own nothing but will be happy. It's the surrender of personal rights, the surrender of property, the surrender of ownership, the surrender of free thinking for the promise of safety. That's where it starts getting a little weird, guys, because let's look at that from a biblical perspective for a second, okay? Again, this, right? It looks good on paper, especially the way that people talk about this. When you hear people on the left wing talk about like, oh man, like we need to surrender, you know, what we want to make other people comfortable. It's the same thing with people like, well, my pronouns are him, he, or my pronouns are her, she, and it's like, wait a minute, you're a guy. I'm not going to pretend that you're a woman just to make you happy, okay? I'm going to live in reality. I'm not going to pretend for your sake. I'm not going to go along with your delusion. I'm not going to step out of reality and go along with your delusion just to make you happy. That makes me a crazy person as well. But these people, all right, I'm talking about the people on the far left and the people that rule the world. They very much think in this way, that to solve the world's issues, all the common folk surrender what they want to do, surrender what makes them comfortable for the promise and safety of security tomorrow. So, give an example. All right. Bill Gates is someone who wants to vaccinate the entire world. And it's interesting. When you go on, you listen to his talks, that's what he wants to do. He wants to vaccinate everyone. He wants to vaccinate everyone against everything. But what if you're someone who maybe has a religious exemption towards vaccination, or maybe you're just a little bit skeptical of it? Don't you have a right to question that? Well, let's go back to the Bible. If we're Christians, right? And everything ultimately that we believe should come straight from the Word of God, because if it doesn't come from the Word of God, it's not worth standing on at all, right? I'm not going to die on a hill that God himself does not stand on. Okay, so let's take a look at what the Word of God says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light. And from there, the process of creation began. And God gets the planets in the stars and the suns and the moons. He gets all this stuff into place, the trees, the vegetation, the animals. And then God puts on the earth his crowning achievement. You and me. Mankind. Man and woman. Male and female. But God does something very different with man and woman than he does with the stars, than he does with the moon, than he does with the animals, the plants. He does something very different with you and I than he does with any other part of his creation. He said, let us, and when it's interesting, when you study that, it actually says, then God said, let us make man in our image. Then God, singular, said, let us, plural, make man in our image. That's one of the first times you actually see the Trinity, the concept of the Trinity in the Bible. You do see the Trinity in the Old Testament. A lot of people don't think you do, but you do all over the place. So God made man in his image. Well, one of the things that means is that we were created to reflect the very nature and character of God. To be made in the image of God does not necessarily mean that we look like him physically. What it means is that we were made to reflect, like in a mirror. We were made to reflect back to him his very nature and character. And a big part of being made in the image of God is something called free will. The very thing, my friends, one of the very things that makes you a human being and not a robot is your ability to have free will, right? Little side note here. Animals do not have free will. I know a lot of us like to attribute human-like qualities to animals, right? And there's a cute little point to do that at. But at a certain point, it's totally unbiblical, actually. Animals can feel emotions. Animals do not have free will. Animals act on instinct, okay? Now, animals can be trained to react or respond certain ways to certain prompts, but they don't have free will. What I mean by that is this. What free will is this? Free will is being able to look at a decision and be able to weigh it out on a scale of morality and then make a decision based off right and wrong. Animals don't do that. Before a lion attacks a gazelle, he doesn't stand there and think, oh, wait a minute, I'm about to take a life. No, he's like, I'm hungry, there's food on legs, and I'm going to tackle it, kill it, and eat it. Human beings are the only beings created in the image of God, meaning we are the only beings with free will. So if you have a religious exemption, a reason for not wanting to take a vaccine, or if you're a little skeptical and you want to do some research, or maybe you just don't trust it, don't you have the right to refuse someone trying to put something in your own body? Don't you have the right to be able to think for yourself as an individual? You do, according to the Word of God. But according to this elite class of people at the World Economic Forum, you and I do not really, ultimately, at the end of the day, are not smart enough to run our own lives, and they need to run our lives for us because they know how to run our lives and run our world better than you and I do. And currently, as we speak, this group of people, which is made up of about 2,500 people, again, everything from heads of state to tech leaders to business moguls, all these people are meeting right now in Davos, Switzerland, talking about the world's problems and how to fix them. And most of the answers center around a global type of government, global type of ideals that you and I would surrender to. They don't use that wording, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. So that's happening right now as we speak, and a lot of people don't know about that. They're looking at things specifically, like I said, as the next pandemic. That's what they're talking about. But let's go on from there. That's just one thing that's not getting covered right now. Another part of the global situation that isn't really getting much coverage right now is what is happening in China. Okay, everyone knows what's happening in Russia right now, okay? Right now in Russia, what you see is obviously Russia's still invading Ukraine. And it's interesting, 2 months later now, and Russia has still not overtaken Ukraine. So something's funky here. But what we do know is Russia is spending money. Russia is literally bleeding money like crazy right now. Because not only are they spending money on a war effort trying to defeat the Ukraine and take over Ukraine, but at the same time, the United States, as well as other countries, have put a lot of sanctions on Russia. We've shut down a lot of things coming from Russia. So Russia is literally bleeding money right now. Russia's a world superpower, okay? They're nothing like they were under the former Soviet Union, but still, in the world today, they are a global superpower. They're right up there with the U.S. and China. Those are the big three, Russia, U.S., and China. And Russia is bleeding money right now, and everyone kind of sees that, but people aren't paying attention to what's happening in China right now. So what you're seeing in China right now is something very, very interesting, and here's why it's very interesting. Right now, you have three of the top countries, three of the top superpowers in the world: the United States, Russia, and China. Two of those have begun to go down a steep decline. Russia, like we just mentioned, is bleeding money right now and not winning the war that they thought that they would easily win within a matter of hours. Here we are 2 months later. But the United States, the other world superpower, is steadily declining and declining quickly when it comes to inflation, highest gas prices we've seen ever. Literally, highest gas prices we've seen ever. Crazy inflation, talks of a food supply shortage, supply chain shortage. Things are going crazy here right now. So you would think the other world superpower, being China, has a prime opportunity to really take themselves up to the very top while the other two are going down. And they did have an opportunity to do that. But then this happened. China recognizes, hey, we got some COVID cases still in our country. We don't want COVID cases. We want to make a statement to the world that we, China, eradicate. We are the top of the world and we eradicate COVID-19 in our country. So what did they do? China once again began shutting down entire cities. Like Shanghai, which is shut down right now, there are 26 million people. 26 million people shut down in China right now. And you might be saying, well, we experience shutdowns. They always get better. Well, you don't understand. When you and I were shut down, there were certain places we couldn't go, and when we did go to those places, we had to wear a mask. What is happening right now in China with 26 million people on total lockdown, they are not allowed to leave their homes, as in they cannot walk outside. I want you to get this. 26 million people, and the news is not covering this, that are not even being allowed to leave their homes right now. This has had a couple interesting effects. One, those cities where this is happening, these 26 million people, literally starting to go crazy. There's videos that you can find on YouTube where you can actually watch this, just entire cities screaming, locked in their homes. But two, what's happening with this is because China has shut down major cities in their country, 26 million people, they have shut down a lot of their manufacturing. So as Russia is kind of at a standstill right now and bleeding money, and as the United States is kind of plummeting right now as it comes to the economy, China also shoots themselves in the foot and is also beginning to decline because they are not producing like they could be right now because they've shut down their major cities. So here's some big scenarios that are happening right now. You have the World Economic Forum meeting right now to decide what they're going to do with the next pandemic, among other things about how to track you and I and all these different things. You have the United States and Russia, two world superpowers, kind of steadily declining and bleeding money, but you also have the third world superpower shut itself down. Now, what does this mean? What does this entire global current situation mean for you and me? Well, one thing is this. Where does the United States get so many of its goods? China. Notice that when you go to the store, you don't really see many things with made in Russia stamped on it unless you're buying vodka or those little stacking dolls. That's about it. Russia's GDP is actually extremely weak. So that's not really a threat. But China, we get so much stinking stuff from China. How many American businesses, and I've done podcast episodes on this before, how many American businesses over the last number of decades have moved their manufacturing over to China? A lot. And why? Because it's cheaper over there. You can create a product much cheaper over there, ship it back to America, sell it for 8 times the price that it took to make it, and you make more of a profit. Well, right now, a lot of American businesses are starting to pull out of China because China's shutting down again. But the things that we do get from China and that China ships all over the world, because they've shut themselves down, that is going to possibly create a kink in the supply chain issue. So I want you to think about this. And I want you to think about this specifically in terms of, some of the things that God has said. So, if you've been watching Camp on the Hill for a while, one of the things that God has told us is that a storm is coming. All right, that is prophetic word that I got from the Lord months ago that I shared on here. It's been confirmed by other people. Other people around the world are talking about that a storm is coming. God didn't tell me what that storm was. I can take my guess at what that storm is. What I think possibly it could be, and again, I'm not saying that this is from God. God did say a storm is coming. But I do believe what we're going to be seeing is we're going to see gas prices continue to rise. We're going to see supply chain issues because of the lockdowns in China and everything that's happened. We're going to see supply chain issues, which is going to cause the price of goods and services to go up even higher. Inflation going even higher. So that could really affect the American economy. And at the same time, you have the World Economic Forum meeting right now, and deciding about international sanctions and international things, especially when it comes to like our health, that we would have to agree into. I want to tell you, and I'm wrapping up here. This is a short one tonight. But I want to explain to you what I believe all of this is leading to. What I think we're going to begin to see is we are going to begin to see in the United States something that at least people my age have never witnessed before in our lifetime. And a lot of people, you've probably never seen this in your lifetime. We're going to begin to see, I believe, the rise of patriotic states within America. You're going to see some states just go with the flow and go with the program, go with everything the Biden administration says, you're also going to see other states begin to rise up and say, we are not listening to you anymore. We are going to do what the Constitution says we can do, and we are going to be our own sovereign nation state. That's what the states are. They're their own sovereign states. They are only really to submit to the federal government around a few certain very specific things. Well, over the past number of decades, our federal government has overstepped the Constitution in many, many ways. And one of the big things that this Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade back to the states, one of the big things this has done, this is going to open up more and more opportunities for all these different issues, from gay marriage to all sorts of different things, lockdowns, vaccinations, all these things, mask wearing. It's going to open up opportunity for all of these things now to go back to the states to decide, rather than a strong federal government deciding that. And what we're going to do is we are going to be, I truly believe this, we are entering a season where we are watching the states literally divide. Not a civil war. I don't believe there's going to be actual war, but we're going to see the division of states. And you're going to see some states stand for freedom and stand for biblical values. There's already, I think I heard 26 states that are, just waiting for the Roe versus Wade thing to be officially announced, because the moment it's announced, there are already like 26 states that are ready to eradicate abortion. What you're going to see, I truly believe this, we're going to witness the division of the states. We're going to see states like California that continue to just go along with everything the federal government wants to do and everything that these international organizations want to do, and they're going to take it even further. And you're going to see those states absolutely suffer and go downhill. You're going to see them suffer culturally. You're going to see them suffer socially. You're going to see them suffer educationally. You're going to see them suffer economically. You're going to see them suffer in all these different ways. And then you're going to see states like Florida and states like Texas that are going to be blessed like crazy. They're going to thrive economically, culturally, socially, educationally, in every way. You're going to see, as this storm comes upon the earth, you're going to see, this is a spiritual storm, you're going to see states that choose to stand upon worldly ideals and concepts, things that God calls evil, and they are going to be swept away. Those states are going to be, they're going to go through some hard times. But then I believe you're going to see these states, and you're going to see nations as well, not just states, but nations around the world do this, that say, hey, we are not getting involved with this system, this global system at all. We are going to stand for righteousness, and we are going to stand for truth. We are going to stand for freedom of choice and freedom of will and freedom of expression. And you're going to see those states, and you're going to see those nations thrive. I truly believe, guys, we are on the verge right now. This whole global situation right now that no one is talking about and that so many are unaware of right now, as we're seeing the 3 world superpowers beginning to go down, is what it looks like. You're going to begin to see the rise of nations that love God and love his people Israel. And you're going to begin to see the rise of states that build their morals and the culture of their state upon the word of God. And those states and those nations will be protected from the coming storm, whereas the others will suffer, I believe, greatly. And so it's going to be very, very apparent where God's blessing is and where cursing is. So it's very, very interesting. We are living in a very interesting time, my friends. Very, very interesting time. So I have a challenge for you. When you get done watching this video, go over to YouTube and type in World Economic Forum, and I want you to start looking through some of the sessions that they're talking about at the Davos Forum this year, and begin watching and begin listening critically. You kind of got to read between the lines, but listen critically. That means ask questions. When these people say things, ask questions. What does it actually mean? What is their worldview? What do they want to do? And I want you to see what these people genuinely are doing right now. Secondly, engaging the culture. If you like the things that we have been talking about here on Camp on the Hill, and you want to take it a step further by getting in a room with other people who are where you're at, who love God and who want to see this nation restored to everything that it was made by God to be, and you want to be a part of that, you want to be an acting part of that, get to Engaging the Culture, a class that I'm offering at my church right now, head on over to my personal Facebook page, Rob Mervine, Murvine, and get some more information on when the next Engaging the Culture class is. You want to be there. And I promise you, you will be blessed if you are there, and you're going to be around some really, really awesome people who are moving to be a part of this remnant that God is using right now to bring about his kingdom on this earth. So guys, thank you for joining me tonight. I know it's a short one, but I love you. And I look forward to seeing you next time.